What's up, everyone? Nick Bell here, your Line 6 product specialist. Hope everyone's doing all right. Thank you for joining today. Today, what I wanted to do was kind of talk about, how I get a Randy Rhoads guitar sound. Now, one thing about Randy Rhoads, if there's one thing he's probably not, best known for, it would be his guitar tone. I will say it's not the greatest guitar tone by today's standards, but it was definitely something new and, different. Back in late 70s, early 80s, from his time with Quiet Riot all the way to, Ozzy Osbourne. So I thought it'd be pretty cool to kind of dive in, take a look at how he got his sound, because, believe it or not, Randy Rhoads is what got me into playing guitar altogether. And so I have a lot to think of him for that, for sure. But, his tone definitely captured my ear. And so I thought it'd be cool to kind of dive into it. This is kind of like a mash of Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. That's when Randy started using, Marshall amplification and stuff. Even though his pedal board kind of remained the same when he was with Quiet Riot, he was actually using a PV bass amp, and so a lot of his tone came from his pedals, especially that Mxr Distortion Plus. So today, like I said, it's kind of a mash of the Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman tones, because it's practically the same methods he used to get that sound. But if you're not familiar with the tribute album that Ozzy released in the mid '80s, being a tribute to Randy, being a live album, his tone sounds really good on that album compared to his studio stuff. And so I kind of do kind of the best of all the worlds, if you will, kind of mixing the two albums, as well as kind of blending in that live tone as well. Really just adding some plate reverb or a big kind of stadium type reverb, and you have that live Rhoads tone. Taking a quick look at the chat here, Andy Brown, Doc Brown, Tony, and Ross, the whole crew's here, the whole PST. So before I get too far into this Randy Rhoads tone, obviously that's what we're doing today. We're talking about Rhoads, going through PodGo. But if you have a question that has nothing to do with Randy Rhoads, and maybe it's the new firmware 3.0 that just came out, maybe it's a question about PodGo, whatever questions you may have, let us know. It doesn't have to be about Randy Rhoads. This is just kind of our conversational piece that we get to talk about while we answer your guys' questions. So a big thanks to the product specialists, Doc, Tony, Ross, that are here. And FedEx just dropped off your PodGo about 30 minutes ago. Matt, that's awesome. I'll make sure to share this tone with you guys today. And the Tone Shack, Tony, you shred, yeah. No, Tony definitely shreds. He keeps us on our toes for sure. So thanks, Pops. Anyway, so let's just kind of, get on with it, have some fun. Hopefully my quality's a little better this time around. We are hardwired, so let us know if we have any weirdness happening. So starting off, guys, taking a look at the amp Randy was using, like lots of the guitar players we tend to favor. Never stand with Van Halen. Jimmy Rhoads has never been the top. Randy Rhoads will never stand with Edward Van Halen or Jimmy. Rhoads has never been the top 10 of guitar greats. Joseph, I agree. It's kind of a shame. But when you think about it, I feel that he definitely, made his mark on the world and kind of gave us the kind of tones and sounds that we have today. So while questions are coming in, I'll let the other product specialists handle that, and I'll just, get on talking about this tone. So starting off with the amp, like I was saying, and like many other guitar players use, we have a Marshall Model 1959, or your Marshall Plexi, if you will. And he's going into a 412 cabinet, except he's using Altec speakers. And so these Altec speakers were, really responsible for getting a lot of the highs that Randy got. For some reason, Randy didn't like low end. He thought that his Les Paul going through his amp just had a lot of low end and sounded a little muffled or just nasally. And so, believe it or not, he, if his tone wasn't, really far on the high end, as it were, he adds these Altec, 417s into his cabinet, and so we'll check that out as well. And then, really, guys, I don't know why that Mxr Distortion Plus on here is showing up as a tube screamer, but let's pretend this is an Mxr Distortion Plus. His rig, really simple, guys. Everything was just straight into the front of his amp, being a crybaby, more of like a phasal voice type of a crybaby, going into his Mxr Distortion Plus and then his Mxr EQ. Now, there's been lots of debate on how his EQ was set up. Lots of users in forums and stuff always claim that he did a big scoop on the or a big bump on the mids and kind of left the lows and the highs flat. You'll see that my experience has been a little different. I felt that alleviating or removing a lot of the low end with the equalizer and just kind of keeping the mids there, kind of got me closer. But again, I'm using a Pacifica 611 here, compared to a Les Paul or whatever guitar you may be using. So like I said, these effects, the parameters for you may move around for sure. So we have an Mxr EQ, Mxr Flanger, Mxr Chorus. I'm surprised he wasn't sponsored by Mxr by this time. And then we have a Korg Echo. He used several different Echo units throughout his years, but for the live stuff, he really just kind of relied on what the sound guy was doing. So before I get into tone building, I thought it would be cool to kind of dive in and and see what Max Norman, the producer of Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman, straight from the horse's mouth here. Starting off, Randy's amps, what he has here on top, Randy's amps were set up in a stone room underneath the control room. They were facing into stone steps that led down to the stone room. So right with that information, you can tell that probably has a lot to do with why Randy's tone was so far on the high end and really brittle, if you will. So if you don't have a stone room to mic your amp up in, you'll definitely you'll definitely have your work cut out for you. So I'm sure that definitely helped out with the tone. Now take a look here underneath. We have his amps. His amp setup was a Marshall stack with two 412 cabs. We had 4 Shure SM57s right over the voice coils on all 4 of the speakers. 2 speakers on top, 2 on the bottom, caddy cornered. The center of the microphone was right on the voice coil edge on a tangent facing right at it. Then we had a Neumann U82 sitting about 8 feet in front of the stack, and then another U87 about 20 feet further back from that. And so when you think of that, there is a lot of air in Randy's tone, especially when you kind of are doing, I've always been, used to the, 3-to-1 rule for every mic, you go kind of 3 inches, so on and so forth from there if you want to capture more air. But 20 feet back, that's a trip. That's a lot. And so now think of just one guitar with that kind of a tone, and then layer a second track, and then a third, and then sometimes even a fourth. That's what Randy did. He loved to layer his tracks, and so that's where a lot of the tone comes from as well. How do you make a thin sounding guitar sound thicker? You double it, and the more you keep doing it, the thicker it's going to sound. So throughout the albums, you hear many different tones because the albums were rushed. So you have some songs that, there was more time put in than others. And so his tone is kind of moving all over the place. So taking a look at a tone that I pre-baked, this is how it looks, the closest I could get. Now, keep in mind we're using Pod Ghost, so we do have a few items that are semi-fixed, such as the amp and the cab, the equalizer, as well as the volume and the Crybaby. So if we want to be 100% traditional to Randy's tone, let's see here, I'm going to remove this. I'll show you that a little later so we're not blocking anything I'm doing. But like I was saying, since we may be limited to do 100%, to be 100% traditional to Randy's tone, you may want to move out this chorus to be either the flanger or maybe another effect of your choosing. I tend to just keep a chorus just due to, you will hear Randy using a flanger in maybe songs like I Don't Know from Blizzard of Oz, but a lot of what he did that is confused to be a flanger is he never used his wah-wah how, a guitar player should. What he would do a lot of times is, especially, with his Les Paul, is he would kill the neck pickup, never use the neck pickup, but as the neck pickup was killed, he would do a cool effect with the toggle switch where he would do kind of a kill switch effect, and he would engage his wah-wah and just kind of sweep it through its spectrum and kind of give us that kind of a flanged, type of sound. So keep that in mind. It may not be just a flanger. So that's why the chorus really works for me. I think that's one of the effects other than delay that Randy used the most. And again, when Randy did use delay, it was in a live setting. So this is the complete tone here, but why don't we just build it from scratch? And so before I go any further, guys, let's take a quick look at the conversations happening here. And so Tony Campanomo, Max Norman did all Megadeth album during the prime years. Heck yeah. I refer to all Megadeth's good stuff. Would these tones work on an LT? So Old Man Variax, I love the name. But this exact tone will not work on the LT. However, I do have a variation of this tone on Custom Tone that is designed for Helix. So, check out this link that I'll send you that I'll post in momentarily. And as long as you just search my name in Custom Tone, NBell, that's NBELL, you'll find all my tones. So you can definitely find this tone in the Helix version that I created. So, looks like we're doing good. You can download it, but you can download and import LT different platforms. Thank you, Tone Shack. All right, guys, so I'm just going to stop talking, and I'm just going to get on building. So, starting off with the amp, let me move some stuff around here, take a look at my notes. And so the amp that I'm going to use today, guys, it looks like we have this little Fender happening here. All right. So we have a clean amp, definitely not the amp for today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a Marshall model 1959. And so I'm going to scroll down here. Now keep in mind, these three amp models right here are the exact same amp. Now the jumped here is actually the same that we get here in the or actually, no, this is the one I'm looking for. Brit Plexi, the trim threw me off. Sorry, guys. So the same the same applies to these three models, just like these three models, which they're the exact same amp. And now, if I wanted to choose the Plexi Jump, then I would get a complete Plexi with both the normal and the bright channels. Now, if you like just the normal channel, we modeled just the normal channel. If you want the bright channel, just choose the bright channel, and that's what we're going to choose today. Now, the reason why is Randy's Marshall was, it was modded, not heavily, but it was modded with one of the most popular mods they call like the one-wire mod, where they pretty much cascaded the first gain stage into the rest of the preamp, kind of like what Mesa Boogie, brought to the table for their, high gain amplifier. But, this was a pretty popular mod that lots of guys were doing in the late 70s, early 80s to their Marshalls, and it just really made the preamp cook a lot hotter than it actually was, and than it was out of straight from the factory. And Randy also was known for hooking his amp up into a Variac. Hearing many guitar players, maybe he even heard Eddie was doing something like that. But in the studio, they thought that maybe they could kind of turn down the volume a bit by turning the Variac from 100 watts down to maybe 90, 92, and just to get from what Max Norman was saying, just to get the distortion kind of cooking a bit more. So let's start building this. So for my drive, what do we want here? Brit trim, bright. Actually, I'm gonna change out to this amp right here. Make sure we're doing all good. And so let's go to 10. And then for the bass, we'll take that to about 7. And then the mids, we'll go to about 8.3. And the presence, I'm going to move that to 8 as well. So we'll move that there. And then the treble let's put that back to 9. And then moving on, we got channel volume. Now, channel volume, this is really up to you. This plays no role in the amp's tone. So, definitely move that wherever you want. But the master volume definitely does affect the amp's tone because it's, talking directly to the output transformer, how hard we're pushing. So now that we've passed the master volume, we're now in the power amp control. So like I said, Randy used a Variac to lower his amp about 10 watts. So I'm just going to raise the sag about to 6. Again, guys, you can move this around to your playing style. Different environments and different guitars will sound different. Now hum, I'm going to leave that there because we never have to worry about that 60 cycle heater hum in this tone. As for the ripple, to kind of get that characteristic that the amp is pushing as hard as it can and get those juicy artifacts that a tube amp releases when you're really pushing it. So I'm going to crank this up to about 8. Now the bias, like I said, Randy had a mod done to his amp with the one wire mod, and as well as running it through that Variac, kind of messes with the output transformer a bit, and also to kind of help with the tone to give us a little more of a brightness and more of a brittle type of a sound. I'm going to raise that up to 8 as well. And with bias excursion, if you crank bias excursion up and you have the master volume cranked, you're going to experience a lot more compression within the tubes. And so you may think, well, yeah, if this is a Randy Rhoads tone, I want to crank this up. But to my ears and to my hands, what I like is cranking the bias excursion down. Now, it's not so much that I'm taking the compression away from the tubes. It's more of a voicing where, from the tubes, where this gives me more of a tighter low end, so that when I bring the EQ in, it makes it even easier to kind of roll off that low end that Randy wasn't a fan of. And I'm going to go all the way down to 1 point. Now, the amp or the cab that we have matches this 412 greenback, and we can hear what that sounds like. So blind, visually impaired folks. All right, so let's take a quick look at what we're looking here in the chat, so I don't get too ahead of myself. Let's see. Back in the 80s, my dad bought a 100-watt lead and cab for Christmas. Bought it a guy, and 2 years later sold it for him. Yeah, I hear you, man. I still have a 1978 Marshall JMP. I don't think I will ever part from it. Taking another look here. I didn't know you can use so many pods. Cool device. It is, definitely. So, Lewis, when you are going to add a screen reader capabilities to your interface, so blind and visually impaired folks, I'd be happy to volunteer some of my time for testing. It's hard to find usable gear when you're blind guitarist, so you'd have a corner. Well, Lewis, thanks for letting us know. It's always good. And as you know, with Line 6, we're always listening to our customers and implementing, updates and so on and so forth. So thank you for letting us know that. So looks like nothing's wrecked, so we will continue on. So as you may have heard, from that example I just did, there's a lot of low end. Doesn't really sound like a Randy Rhoads tone. So what I did, instead of, kind of finding the right cabinet, and to be honest, we don't model in an Altec speaker. So it's kind of hard for me to recreate 100% that tone. So what I did is I hopped onto our marketplace, and I was able to purchase an IR pack. And so what I want to do is I want to bring this up. It actually closed on me. So what this IR pack is it's from Ownhammer. It's the DVR-B pack, and he actually modeled an Altec 417 speaker. And so what I did is I downloaded that pack. I'll make sure to give all the info you need to go on our marketplace and get that. So you can literally go on our marketplace right now and get the exact speaker model that Randy Rhoads used, and many others. So the speaker that the actual model that I was using from this pack was the 112 47. The 412. Where did I put you? And then we're going to do this one right there. And so now we have the 417 divert. Yep. So now this cabinet, or this model that I have right here, is the exact same speaker model that Randy used. So now let's hear what we have. So there's still some low end present there. So what I can do right off the bat is kind of lower the low cut. And I always recommend, when you're building a tone, any tone, before you throw an EQ on there, check out the high and low cut within your cabinet. Because how I've always used EQ to kind of take away what I don't want, as opposed to compensate and add more. So took out some low end. Let's hear what we got. So we're getting close, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add our overdrive. So just like this kind of same situation we had with our cabinet, we don't yet have a model of an Mxr Distortion Plus. So what worked out best for me was the Heir Apparent. So we are going to dive on down. Where'd you go? Let's take a quick look here. And then we have this guy here. And so this was the closest I can get to like an Mxr Distortion Plus type of a sound. So taking a quick look here, we're going to want to raise our gain about up to 8. And then the tone, we could keep that at 5. But then I'm going to put the clipping to distortion, and I'm going to leave the gain at higher and leave the level alone. Now, I'm not sure if you can hear this yet, but I'm already starting to get quite a bit of noise. And so with that noise, and believe it or not, we're even being traditional to Randy's tone, because Ozzy was, really, he was known for calling Randy's rig the chip pan, because it would crackle and pop just like, they were frying chips in England, right? So, we're getting there. We're on the right path. So with that in mind, let's turn on our input gate. So I'll just turn this on, and immediately the sound is gone. And so how I set up a noise gate is I just kind of roll off the sound. I'll even turn the volume up, and then I'll just roll the threshold until we don't hear any unnecessary humming or noise. And so now we're a lot closer to that sound. And so let's see what we All right. So we have our overdrive going, and we're getting there. We're getting closer. So next, let's add our equalizer. So I'm just going to move some stuff around here. All right. So now we'll go to EQ, but instead of adding an EQ, I could just go to our EQ here and literally click and drag it over. And so now that we have that, I'm going to choose the 10-band graphic EQ. And so, this is, really modeled kind of after the exact same thing that Randy had, being the 10-band graphic EQ. And so for the low end, I'm going to roll this down to -7 decibels, making it almost, unheard of. -5 for the around 62 hertz, and we'll do about right there on the money. And then for 125 hertz, let's take that down to 3.6. And so as you can see here, I'm rolling off the low end. I'm not adding a bunch of highs. I'm taking away what I don't want. Now we're starting to cross over into the low mids, into the mids. So for 250 hertz, I'm going to actually raise this about 3.8. I'm going against my notes from writing this tone a little earlier. So for you, this may change. Think of Randy using a Les Paul where it was, full mahogany with a maple top. Compared to my setup here, I don't have, that much going on. So if you're using a Les Paul like Randy, this may definitely move around for you. So for 500 hertz, we're going to roll this to about 3.4. And moving on to 1 kilohertz here, we have 3.6 I'm going to add. And then move on from there. A lot of fun right now, huh? And so for 2 and 4 kilohertz, we're just going to keep those where they're at. And really, the rest goes, for the other parameters here. Just for fun, I just bump this up about a decibel. And so now let's hear the kind of sound that we have. All right, not too bad. So now that we have our amp, we have our cabinet, we have our overdrive, and our EQ, we can start adding other effects as well. So next in line, like I said, depending on the kind of Rhodes tone you're doing or the overall sound, this effect may change. Like I said, it could be either a flanger or a chorus, but I just like using the chorus. I'm using the 70s chorus modeled after a Boss CE1. And so kind of the fail-safe with, any time-based effect other than delay. So we're talking, like modulations here. Kind of the fail-safe here is to put the effects time into to note subdivision or note sync, what we have here. And I'll just literally roll this to a whole note. So with the tap tempo on Pod Go, however fast you set the tempo in Pod Go, this will track nicely, very nicely, and it will always be in time with the song band or, whatever you're doing. And in regards to the settings, I didn't really move them around much. And same goes for Randy. Through research, you'll notice that he wasn't he wasn't that strict in regards to what was going on with his tone. He just kind of, yep, it sounds good, and rolled with it. At least from the research, what research says. He was mainly focused on just the music and the guitar itself, as opposed to bells and whistles. So I'm just going to bypass this because it's not a big part of the tone. Like I said, that may change and move around for you. Now, moving on, Randy used delay. Now, he, not having effects loops installed and stuff, especially for the time period, we're going to put this delay in front of the amp. I normally like to run my delay after the amp. It's a lot cleaner that way, but to be traditional here, we're going to run this in front of the amp, and we're going to use a transistor tape delay. Now, same thing here. I'm going to put the time from milliseconds into note subdivision, because if you've ever tried to match milliseconds to a song, you probably know it takes forever. So I'm going to move the note sync to quarter notes, and feedback, I like to roll this back fairly low, maybe about 10%. That way I only hear about 1.5 repeats coming back. And the wow flutter, if you really want to get the sense of, that bent, that kind of old decaying tape in your machine that needs to get replaced, you could crank that up as well. Otherwise, I kind of just leave what we have here where it is. Of course, the mix, you'll want to move that around to your liking. And then finally, guys, as we know, Randy, like I was saying earlier, Randy loved to, double and triple his guitars. In addition to that, as we read from Max Norman, he used 3 microphones right up on the speaker cone, one 8 feet away from that, and then another Neumann 20 feet from there. So that's a lot of air. So to kind of give that impression, I'll use a room reverb. And so for the room reverb, I'll barely adjust the settings just a little bit, where I'll leave the decay about the same, because what I don't want to happen is when you start to really bring in more of this room reverb, and if you start to layer your guitar tracks, some of the clarity may get a little lost. So I kind of, I really enjoy the default settings that we have here for the room reverb. But like I said, I may move the pre-delay up just a couple milliseconds. And again, depending on the room you're in, whatever it may be, this could definitely change. So let's take a listen at, what we Yeah, very cool. So enough of me messing around. So guys, that's my Randy Rhoads tone. Nothing too crazy to it. Hopefully that kind of, will, give you some insights on how Randy got his sound. Now, if you would like to download this tone, this is a link you can follow. Just copy and paste that, into your web browser, or just go on to line6.com, click the custom link tab at the top of the screen, and just type in my name, N Bell. You see it here on the screen, Nick Bell. Just type in N Bell, and all my tones will pop up for Podgo and Helix. But keep in mind, the tone I'm using here is using an impulse response. It's using the Own Hammer DVR beat pack. And so if you want to get as close as possible to any tone, what helps is having the exact, as close to the exact gear that they were using. So before I sign off, guys, let's just take a quick look at what we have in the chat here. I would like to, make sure we're all doing good. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually post the tone here. Let's see, 599 ending in 260. There we are. So I'm just going to enter that in there. Hopefully it posts to both YouTube and Facebook. But guys, thank you so much. Great tone after you added the reverb, John. I agree. I feel like that really kind of adds to that Randy Rhoads sound of having multiple recordings, if you will. very close now. Oh man, that sounds sweet. Old Man Variax, dude, thank you so much. Great tutorial, much appreciated, guys. So like I said, this will live for a while on our webpage. So other than that, guys, stick around for more 3.0 firmware update videos and so on and so forth. Other than that, thank you so much, and we will see you on the next stream. Have a great and safe holiday weekend.